The bottle shattered against the wall 2 inches from my head. I didn't flinch anymore. Not after the first dozen times. Glass rained down onto the stained carpet, and my father, Mark Ashford, swayed in the doorway of the kitchen, whiskey on his breath and rage in his bloodshot eyes. The empty bottle still dangled from his thick fingers before he let it drop and stumble forward. "An alpha," he slurred, jabbing a finger into my chest. "That's what your mother owed me. A strong alpha son. Not some fragile little omega who hides behind books." I said nothing. Words only made it worse. I'd learned that lesson when I was 12, curled on the bathroom floor with a bloody lip and a mother who was too tired to stop the bleeding. She was gone now. 3 years buried under a cheap headstone that I paid for with summer jobs and skipped lunches. "You listening to me?" He grabbed my collar and shoved me against the wall. The plaster cracked behind my shoulders. "Just wait. He'll tire himself out." I wanted a son who could carry the family name. Instead, I got you. The word dripped with disgust. A scholarship boy who thinks he's better than his own father. My jaw tightened, but I kept my eyes down. Submissive. Safe. I'd learned to play the role of the defeated Omega long ago. It hurt less that way. His fist connected with my ribs. Once. Twice. I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted copper. Then, like a storm passing, he staggered back, exhausted. He collapsed into his recliner, already reaching for another bottle on the floor. "Get out," he mumbled. "Go to your fancy school. Pretend you belong there." I didn't need to be told twice. I grabbed my backpack from the floor, the same one I'd had since 9th grade, patched at the seams, and walked to the front door. The morning light was just starting to creep through the dirty curtains. Dawn meant freedom. Just for a few hours. I paused at the threshold and looked back at my father, already half asleep in the chair. One day, I thought. One day I'll walk out and never come back. I closed the door quietly. Some lessons never leave you. The transformation from our rundown neighborhood to Whitmore University took 45 minutes by bus. I spent it with my forehead pressed against the cold window, watching the houses get bigger, the streets get cleaner, and the air smell less like desperation. Whitmore was a world away from everything I knew. Golden brick buildings rose against a sky so blue it almost looked fake. Manicured lawns stretched for acres, dotted with students in designer clothes and expensive watches. Laughter floated across the campus like music from a party I had never been invited to. I stepped off the bus and walked through the front gates, head held high despite the ache in my ribs. "You belong here," I told myself. "You earned this. A full academic scholarship." The only reason I wasn't still sleeping in that rundown house with no hope of escape. My grades were perfect. My future was bright. My body just had to survive long enough to reach it. I adjusted my second-hand blazer and walked toward the science building. That's when I saw him. Damon Whitmore stood in the center of the main courtyard like the sun revolved around him. And maybe at this university it did. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that caught the light and a smile that made omegas and betas alike forget how to breathe. He was laughing at something a friend said, surrounded by a crowd of admirers, all of them desperate for a crumb of his attention. And clinging to Damon's arm like he already owned him was Sebastian Vance. Beautiful, cruel, and dripping with entitlement. Sebastian was the most popular Omega on campus, from one of the wealthiest families in the city. His designer clothes were always immaculate, his hair always perfect, and his smile always sharp enough to cut. He'd decided long ago that Damon Whitmore would be his alpha, and he didn't tolerate competition. Everyone wanted Damon Whitmore. Everyone except me. I pulled my backpack higher on my shoulder and walked the long way around the courtyard. I didn't hate Damon. I just didn't have the energy to care about someone whose biggest problem was probably which sports car to drive on the weekend. But as I passed, something made me glance up. Damon was looking at me. Not the usual dismissive glance the rich kids gave me. A real look. Curious. Like I was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. I looked away first. I always did. I quickened my pace and disappeared into the science building without a backward glance. Behind me, a voice dripped with venom. "Who does he think he is?" I didn't have to turn around to know it was Sebastian. "He's never been here before," Sebastian said loudly, making sure everyone in the courtyard heard. "Does he even go here? Look at his clothes. Look at his walk. He moves like a stray dog that wandered onto the wrong street." Laughter rippled through the crowd. A few of his friends snickered on cue. Damon didn't laugh. I didn't stick around to see why. I thought that would be the end of it. Some rich alpha noticing me for half a second and then moving on to more important things. That's how it always worked in my world. People like Damon Whitmore didn't spare second glances at people like me. I was wrong. 3 days later, I was in the university library, buried in a corner table with 3 textbooks and a cup of cold coffee. This was my favorite spot. Hidden. Quiet. Far away from the designer clothes and the loud laughter and the couples who wrapped themselves around each other like the world owed them happiness. I had just started highlighting a passage about molecular structures when a shadow fell across my page. Mind if I sit here? My heart stopped. I looked up. Damon Whitmore stood above me, holding a single book and looking at me like my answer actually mattered to him. Like he wasn't the most sought-after alpha on campus who could sit anywhere he wanted. Every instinct told me to say no, to pack my things and find another corner. But my pride wouldn't let me run. "It's a free library," I said flatly, returning my eyes to my textbook. "Sit wherever you want." He sat down across from me. The table was small. Too small. I could smell his scent now, cedar and something warm like fresh rain on wood. My omega instincts stirred against my will, and I hated myself for it. He didn't open his book. He just sat there watching me. I lasted 2 minutes before I snapped. "Is there something you need?" Damon leaned back slightly, but his eyes never left my face. "I'm trying to figure you out." "Figure me out?" I laughed without humor. "There's nothing to figure out. I'm a student. I study. I go home. That's it. You're the only omega on this campus who hasn't tried to talk to me." I finally looked at him properly. Up close he was even more unfair. Sharp jaw. Dark lashes. Eyes the color of storm clouds. Everything about him screamed money and power and the kind of beauty that made people stupid. I refused to be one of those people. "Maybe I have better things to do," I said. Damon's lips twitched. Not a smile. Something closer to curiosity. "Like what?" "Like graduating. Getting a job. Surviving." I closed my textbook. "You wouldn't understand." "Try me." I stared at him. Was he serious? The heir to the Whitmore fortune, sitting in a library corner, asking a scholarship omega to explain survival to him? "You're rich," I said bluntly. "You've never worried about rent. Or food. Or whether your father would be sober enough to remember your name." My voice caught on the last word. I looked away. "So no. You wouldn't understand." The silence stretched between us. I expected him to get offended. To leave. Rich alphas had fragile egos. Everyone knew that. But Damon didn't move. "You're right," he said quietly. I blinked. "What?" "I don't understand." His voice was calm. Honest. "But I'd like to." Something shifted in my chest. Something dangerous. I crushed it immediately. "I don't need your pity," I said, standing up and gathering my books. "And I don't need a rich alpha pretending to care so he can feel good about himself." I walked away before he could respond. My heart was pounding. My hands were shaking. I told myself it was anger. It wasn't. The next morning, I arrived at my usual study spot in the library to find something unexpected on the table. A coffee cup. Still warm. And a small note underneath. "You looked like you needed it. D." I stared at the cup like it might explode. Around me, students whispered and pointed. Some of them were already looking at their phones, typing furiously. Gossip traveled fast in a place like this. Sebastian Vance appeared at my elbow before I could decide what to do. "Interesting," he said, his voice sweet as poison. I turned to face him. Sebastian was beautiful in the way expensive things were beautiful, polished, sharp, and designed to make everyone else feel small. His green eyes swept over me like I was something stuck to the bottom of his shoe. "I don't know what game you're playing," Sebastian said quietly, stepping closer, "but Damon Whitmore is mine." "I don't want him," I said. "Good." Sebastian smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Because if I find out you're trying to take something that belongs to me?" He leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I will destroy you. Scholarship or not." He walked away before I could respond, his designer shoes clicking against the library floor like a countdown. I looked down at the coffee cup again. Then I threw it in the trash. I didn't need his kindness. I didn't need his attention. I had survived this long without Damon Whitmore, and I would keep surviving. But as I walked to my first class, I couldn't stop thinking about the way he had looked at me. Like I was worth looking at. And that terrified me more than Sebastian's threats ever could. I told myself the coffee meant nothing. Rich people did random things all the time. Maybe Damon left drinks for strangers every day. Maybe it was some weird charity habit. Maybe I was reading too much into a stupid cup of coffee that I didn't even drink. But then it happened again. The next morning, a sandwich appeared on my usual library table. Wrapped in brown paper with another note. "You skipped lunch yesterday." I saw. D. My stomach twisted. He was watching me? What? I wasn't doing anything interesting. I was just existing, trying to survive, trying to keep my grades high enough to keep my scholarship. I threw the sandwich away too. But my hands shook as I did it. A week passed. The notes kept coming. You study too much. Take a break. That professor grades hard. Let me know if you need help. You look tired today. Go home early. I never responded. I never kept anything he left. But every morning I found myself looking at the table before I sat down, my heart racing just a little faster. I hated it. I hated him for making me feel seen. Because being seen was dangerous. Then came the day everything changed. I was walking across campus when a campus security guard stopped me. Julian Ashford? My blood went cold. Yes. There's an outstanding fee on your account. Lab equipment from the chemistry department. $200. I stared at him. That's impossible. I have a full scholarship. Everything is covered. The guard shrugged. I'm just delivering the notice. Payment is due by Friday, or your account will be frozen. Friday. That was 3 days away. I didn't have $200. I barely had 20. I walked to the financial aid office in a daze. The woman behind the counter was polite but firm. The fee is legitimate. It was added to your account yesterday. Unless you can prove it was a mistake, the payment is required. Who added it? She checked her computer. It doesn't say. I knew. Even without proof, I knew. Sebastian Vance had warned me. And now he was making good on his threat. I spent the rest of the day in a fog. $200. I could skip meals for a month. I could sell my textbooks. I could ask my father for money, but that thought made me laugh bitterly. He'd probably beat me for asking. By evening I had given up. I was sitting on a bench near the science building, staring at the ground, trying not to cry. I hadn't cried in years. I wasn't about to start now. You look like someone stole your favorite book. I looked up. Damon Whitmore stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, watching me with that same curious expression. Go away, I said. Rude. I'm not in the mood. He sat down on the bench next to me anyway. Close enough that I could smell cedar and rain again. I should have moved. I was too tired to move. What's wrong? He asked. Nothing. You're a terrible liar. I turned to look at him. The sunset was hitting his face, making his eyes look almost golden. He wasn't smiling. He looked concerned. Genuinely concerned. And for some reason that broke something inside me. There's a fee on my account, I heard myself say. $200. I don't have it. If I don't pay it by Friday, I lose access to my lab. If I lose access to my lab, I fail the practical exam. If I fail the exam, I lose my scholarship. I stopped. My voice was shaking. And then I have nothing. Damon didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. No, I said immediately. I didn't say anything. You were about to offer me money. I can see it in your eyes. He paused. Then he put his wallet away. You're right. I was. I don't want your money. I know. I don't want your help. I know that too. I stared at him. Then why do you keep trying? Damon looked at me for a long time. The campus was emptying around us, students heading home to their warm dinners and their safe families. But he just sat there like he had nowhere else to be. Because, he said finally, you're the only person here who doesn't want anything from me. Everyone else sees my last name. My money. My status. But you? He smiled, small and almost sad. You just see me. And you still don't want me around. My throat tightened. I'm not going to pay your fee, Damon continued. You made it clear you don't want that. But I am going to help you figure out who added it. Because that's not a mistake, Julian. That's sabotage. I should have refused. I should have walked away. But I was so tired of being alone. Okay, I whispered. Damon nodded once. Okay. We sat there as the sun went down, two strangers who weren't quite strangers anymore. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel completely invisible. That night, I walked home to my father's house. He was already drunk. He always was. Where have you been? He slurred from his chair. Studying. Studying. He laughed, ugly and mean. You think studying will make you an alpha? You'll always be an omega. Weak. Useless. Just like your mother. I walked past him without a word. You hear me? He stood up, unsteady. I said. I heard you. I closed my bedroom door and locked it. He pounded on the wood for a few minutes, shouting nonsense before stumbling away. I slid down against the door and pressed my hand to my chest. My ribs still ached from last time. $200, I thought. Sebastian. My father. The scholarship. Everything was falling apart. But for some reason I kept thinking about Damon's voice. That's sabotage. Someone was trying to destroy me. And for the first time, I wasn't sure I had to face it alone. The rumors started the next morning. I knew something was wrong the moment I stepped onto campus. People were staring. Not the usual glances I got from my worn-out shoes and second-hand blazer. This was different. This was whispers behind hands and looks that cut like knives. I walked faster, keeping my head down. That's him, someone murmured as I passed. The scholarship kid who's seducing Damon Whitmore. My feet stopped on their own. I turned toward the voice. 2 Omega students were huddled by the fountain, pretending to study. When they saw me looking, they didn't even have the decency to act embarrassed. Excuse me? I said. The taller one raised an eyebrow. Don't act innocent. Everyone knows you've been leaving him notes. Meeting him in the library. Trying to trap an alpha with your situation. My situation. She meant my poverty. My lack of status. The fact that I had nothing to offer except my body. He's been leaving me notes, I corrected through clenched teeth. And I threw them all away. The other Omega laughed. Sure you did. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab them both by their designer scarves and explain exactly how little I wanted Damon Whitmore's attention. But I knew better. Anything I said would just make it worse. So I walked away. But the whispers followed me everywhere. By noon the rumor had evolved. Now I wasn't just seducing Damon. I was blackmailing him. Using some secret to force him to pay me attention. Someone claimed they saw me leaving his car. Someone else claimed I had threatened to expose something about his family. None of it was true. None of it. But truth didn't matter on a campus full of bored rich kids with nothing better to do than destroy each other. I skipped lunch. I didn't have the appetite anyway. Instead, I hid in the library bathroom, sitting on the floor between the stalls, pressing my forehead against my knees. You can survive this, I told myself. You've survived worse, but surviving worse didn't make this hurt any less. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Enjoying the attention, scholarship boy? I didn't need to ask who it was. Sebastian Vance had made his move. The fee on my account. The rumors. This was all him. And he was just getting started. I didn't respond. I turned my phone off and stayed in the bathroom until the bell rang for my next class. I thought I could make it through the rest of the day without incident. I was wrong. My last class was chemistry. A subject I loved. A subject I was good at. The one place on campus where I felt like I belonged. Today, even that was ruined. I walked into the lecture hall and immediately noticed the empty seat beside me. Usually no one sat there. Today, every other seat was full except that one. Students had squeezed together in pairs rather than sit next to me. Like I was contagious. Like I was dangerous. I sat down alone and stared at the whiteboard trying to focus. But my vision kept blurring. Not from tears. From exhaustion. From the weight of everyone's eyes on my back. Professor Chin walked in and started the lecture. I took notes mechanically, my hand moving across the page while my mind stayed somewhere else. Then I heard it. A crumpled piece of paper landed on my desk. I unfolded it slowly. Maybe you should just drop out. No one wants you here. I read the words 3 times. Then I folded the paper neatly, put it in my pocket, and finished taking my notes. I didn't cry. I never cried. After class, I was walking toward the exit when a hand grabbed my arm. I spun around, ready to fight. It was Damon. His jaw was tight. His eyes were dark. He looked angrier than I had ever seen anyone look. I heard what they're saying about you, he said. I pulled my arm free. Congratulations. You have ears. This isn't funny, Julian. I'm not laughing. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. I know who started the rumors. Sebastian. He admitted it to one of my friends. He's trying to ruin you. I know. Damon blinked. You know? I've known since the fee appeared on my account. I adjusted my backpack. Sebastian warned me. He said if I went near you, he'd destroy me. And I didn't even go near you. You came near me. Damon ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. Then let me fix this. Let me talk to the administration. Let me tell them the truth. No. Why not? Because that makes it worse. My voice cracked. I took a breath and steadied myself. If you defend me, everyone will think it's because we're actually together. The rumors will get louder. Sebastian will get more desperate. And I looked away. I can't afford more enemies than I already have. Damon was silent for a long moment. Then he said something I didn't expect. Then let me be your enemy. I stared at him. What? If I pretend I don't care about you. If I ignore you in public. If I let everyone think the rumors are lies. He hesitated. Sebastian might back off. My heart pounded. You'd do that? Damon's eyes met mine. For a moment there was something raw in them. Something he wasn't saying. I'd do a lot of things for you, Julian. Even if you never want me to. He walked away before I could respond. I stood in the empty hallway, my hand pressed against my chest, feeling my heartbeat like a warning. Don't fall for him, I told myself, but it was already too late. For 2 weeks, Damon kept his word. He walked past me in the hallways like I was a stranger. He sat on the opposite side of the lecture hall. He didn't leave notes on my library table. Didn't leave coffee. Didn't leave sandwiches. It worked. The rumors quieted. People found someone else to talk about. Sebastian stopped glaring at me every time we crossed paths. The fee on my account mysteriously disappeared. I didn't ask how, and my lab access was restored. I should have been relieved. Instead, I felt emptier than I had in years. I told myself it was for the best. Damon and I came from different worlds. His world was gold and glass. Mine was cracked walls and empty bottles. Even if something had been starting between us, and I wasn't ready to admit that it had, it never would have worked. Rich alphas didn't end up with poor omegas. That only happened in fairy tales. And I had stopped believing in fairy tales the first time my father broke my arm. But life had other plans. It happened on a Thursday. I had just finished my last class and was heading toward the bus stop when my phone buzzed. My father's name appeared on the screen. My stomach dropped. I almost didn't answer. Where are you? His voice was slurred. He was already drunk. It wasn't even 5 o'clock. Coming home, I said carefully. Don't bother. I stopped walking. What? Your fancy friends came by today. He laughed, ugly and sharp. Dropped off some things for you. Real polite. Real rich. My blood went cold. Who? Some alpha. Dark hair. Expensive car. My father's voice turned mean. Said he was worried about you. Said he wanted to make sure you were okay. Damon. Damon had come to my house. Why didn't you tell me you had a rich alpha chasing you? My father demanded. You think I wouldn't notice? You think I wouldn't want a piece of that? Dad. He gave me money, you know. $500. Just for letting him look around. Another laugh. Said it was for household expenses. Like we're some charity case. My hands were shaking. What did you tell him? Nothing he didn't already figure out. My father's voice dropped. He saw the bottles. The holes in the walls. The way you sleep on the floor because I took your bed. I couldn't breathe. He asked if I hurt you. My heart stopped. What did you say? Silence. Then my father spoke again and his voice was different now. Cold. Dangerous. I said you were dramatic. That you always exaggerated things. That you were a difficult omega who didn't know how to appreciate what he had. I closed my eyes. But he didn't believe me. My father's voice cracked. He looked at me like I was nothing, Julian. Like I was dirt under his shoe. And then he said. He stopped. Dad. He said if he ever found out someone was hurting you, he would make sure they regretted it. The line went dead. I don't remember getting home. I don't remember opening the front door or walking down the hallway or seeing my father's silhouette in the kitchen. But I remember the first punch. Came out of nowhere. My father's fist connected with my stomach, and the air left my lungs in a rush. I doubled over, gasping. This is your fault, he hissed. You and your rich alpha. Coming into my house. Looking down on me. Another punch. My ribs. The same ones he had hit before. You think you're better than me? You think you can leave? I tried to shield my face, but he grabbed my hair and yanked my head back. I'm your father, he spat. You belong to me. Not him. Me. He threw me against the wall. My skull cracked against the plaster. Stars exploded behind my eyes. I tasted blood. Through the ringing in my ears, I heard him stumble away, mumbling about getting another drink. The refrigerator opened. A bottle cap clinked against the floor. I lay there on the dirty linoleum, counting my breaths. 1, 2, 3. Get up, I told myself. 4, 5, 6. Get up and leave. 7, 8, 9. You can't stay here anymore. I pushed myself onto my hands and knees. My ribs screamed. My head pounded. But I kept moving. I grabbed my backpack from where it had fallen. I crawled toward the front door. Where do you think you're going? My father shouted from the kitchen. I didn't answer. I pulled myself up using the doorframe. My fingers found the handle. If you walk out that door, don't bother coming back. I opened the door. The cold night air hit my face like a blessing. "I'm not," I whispered. And I walked out into the dark. I didn't know where I was going. My body moved on its own, carrying me down streets I didn't recognize, past houses with warm lights and families eating dinner together. People who had never been hit. People who had never gone to bed hungry. People who weren't me. My phone was in my hand. I didn't remember taking it out. The screen glowed with a single name, Damon. I stared at it for a long time, then I pressed call. He answered on the second ring. "Julian?" His voice was like a rope thrown to someone drowning. "I need you," I said. And for the first time in my life I let someone hear me cry. Damon found me 20 minutes later. I was sitting on a bus bench at the edge of campus, my backpack clutched to my chest like a shield. The night had gotten colder, or maybe that was just the shock setting in. My ribs ached with every breath. My lip was split. I could feel the bruise forming around my eye. I must have looked like a disaster. Damon's car pulled up to the curb so fast the tires screeched. He was out of the driver's seat before the engine fully stopped, his eyes scanning me from head to toe. I saw his expression change. Horror. Then something darker. Something I had never seen on an alpha's face before. Rage. "Who did this to you?" His voice was low, controlled. But I could hear the storm underneath. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. He already knew. Damon crouched down in front of me, his hands hovering over my arms like he was afraid to touch me. Like he thought I might break. "I'm going to kill him," Damon said quietly. "No, you're not. I'm going to kill him." "Damon. He touched you." Damon's voice cracked. "He hurt you. And I just stood in that house 2 weeks ago and let him lie to my face." I stared at him. "You came to my house?" He nodded, jaw tight. "I wanted to see where you lived. I wanted to understand." "And he?" Damon closed his eyes. "He told me you were fine. That you were just dramatic. That you had everything you needed." I laughed bitterly. It hurt my ribs. That sounds like him. I believed him. Damon's hands finally touched my arms, gentle, trembling. I walked away and I believed him. "And now you're sitting here with your face bleeding and I..." "Stop." He looked at me. "You didn't know," I said. "No one knows. I've spent my whole life making sure no one knows." "Then why did you call me?" The question hung in the air between us. Why had I called him? I had survived years of my father's fists without telling a single soul. I had patched my own wounds and hidden my own bruises and cried into my own pillow so no one would hear. But tonight something had broken. Not just my body. Something inside me. "Because," I whispered, "I'm tired of being alone." Damon's expression softened. He reached up slowly, giving me time to pull away, and brushed his thumb across my cheek, wiping away a tear I didn't even know had fallen. "You're not alone anymore," he said. And for some reason I believed him. He took me to his penthouse. I had never been anywhere like it. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Leather couches that probably cost more than my father's house. A kitchen that had never seen a dirty dish. Damon led me to the bathroom and sat me on the edge of the marble tub while he searched through cabinets for a first aid kit. "You don't have to do this," I said. "I know. I can take care of myself." "I know that too." He knelt in front of me with a cotton ball and antiseptic. His hands were gentle as he cleaned the cut on my lip. Gentle as he dabbed at the scrape on my cheekbone. I watched his face while he worked. The concentration in his eyes. The way his jaw stayed tight like he was holding back everything he wanted to say. "Your father," Damon said finally, "is never going to touch you again." "You can't promise that." "Yes, I can." I shook my head. "You don't understand. He's my father. I can't just." "You can." Damon set down the cotton ball and looked at me. "You can walk away. You can stay here. You can let me help you." "Why?" The word came out sharper than I intended. "Why do you care so much?" "I'm nobody. I have nothing. I've been nothing but rude to you since the moment we met." Damon was quiet for a moment. Then he sat back on his heels and said something I never expected. "Because you're the first person who ever looked at me and didn't want something." I frowned. "That doesn't make sense. Everyone wants you. Everyone wants Damon Whitmore." He gestured vaguely at the penthouse, the city, the life spread out beneath us. "The name. The money. The power. But you?" He smiled, small and sad. "You looked at me like I was just some annoying alpha who wouldn't leave you alone. You were annoying." "I know." His smile widened slightly. "But you also looked at me like I was a person. Not a product. Not a prize. Just a person." My throat tightened. "My father," Damon continued, has been planning my future since the day I was born. Which omega I'll marry. Which deals I'll sign. Which version of myself I'm allowed to be. He looked down at his hands. No one ever asks what I want. And what do you want? He looked up. His eyes met mine. I want you. The words hit me like a wave. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Couldn't do anything except sit there while the world rearranged itself around us. You don't mean that, I whispered. I've never meant anything more in my life. I wanted to argue. I wanted to push him away. I wanted to tell him he was crazy, that we were impossible, that people like us didn't get happy endings. But I was so tired of being strong. So instead I leaned forward. And I kissed him. It was soft. Tentative. His lips were warm against mine, and for a moment the pain in my ribs faded. The fear in my chest quieted. Everything fell away except the two of us, sitting on the bathroom floor of a penthouse that felt like another world. Damon pulled back first, his forehead resting against mine. Stay, he said. Tonight. Tomorrow. For as long as you need. I closed my eyes. Okay, I whispered. That night, I slept in Damon Whitmore's bed. His arms were wrapped around me like he was afraid I might disappear. And for the first time in years, I didn't dream about my father. I dreamed about cedar trees and rain. I woke up to sunlight streaming through windows that touched the ceiling. For a moment, I didn't know where I was. The bed was too soft. The sheets smelled like cedar and something clean. Then I felt the arm wrapped around my waist and everything came flooding back. Damon. The kiss. The way he held me like I mattered. I turned my head carefully. He was still asleep, his dark hair messy against the pillow, his face softer than I had ever seen it. In sleep, he didn't look like the powerful alpha everyone feared. He just looked like a boy. A beautiful, impossible boy who had somehow decided that I was worth keeping. My heart ached. I slipped out of bed quietly and found my way to the bathroom. The mirror was unforgiving. A purple bruise bloomed around my left eye. My lip was swollen. My ribs were a constellation of yellow and blue. I looked like a victim. I didn't want to be a victim anymore. Damon found me in the kitchen an hour later, nursing a cup of coffee I had made from his absurdly expensive machine. You're awake, he said, his voice rough with sleep. You have too many buttons on that coffee maker. He smiled and walked toward me. When he reached me, he didn't say anything. He just pulled me into his arms, carefully, gently, like he was holding something precious. I let him. I talked to my lawyer this morning, he said against my hair. I stiffened. What? While you were sleeping. He pulled back just enough to look at my face. Your father isn't going to hurt you ever again, Julian. I'm making sure of it. Damon. He's been arrested. The words didn't process at first. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. There wasn't one. Your neighbor heard the fight last night, Damon continued. She called the police after you left. They found him drunk, covered in blood. Your blood. His jaw tightened. He's being charged with assault. Multiple counts. The police want to talk to you. I sat down heavily on one of his designer bar stools. Julian? Damon crouched in front of me. Are you okay? My father was in jail. The man who had broken my bones, who had made me sleep on the floor, who had told me I was worthless because I was an omega, was in jail. I started laughing. Then I started crying. Damon held me through both. I spent the next 2 days at Damon's penthouse. He went to classes. I stayed behind, icing my bruises and avoiding my phone. The police had taken my statement over the phone. They said my father would likely be held for a long time. There were previous incidents they were investigating. Neighbors who had heard things. Teachers who had seen things. People had known, no one had helped. But someone was helping now. On the third day I finally looked at my phone. 47 messages. Most of them from numbers I didn't recognize. But one stood out. You think hiding in his penthouse will save you? Sebastian. I should have ignored it. I should have blocked him and moved on with my life. But something made me respond. What do you want? His reply came within seconds. Meet me at the old greenhouse behind the botany building. 4 p.m. Come alone or everyone finds out about your father. My blood ran cold. Everyone finds out. He meant the abuse. The arrest. The whole ugly truth I had spent years hiding. If Sebastian exposed it, my scholarship could be threatened. My reputation would be destroyed. Everything I had worked for would crumble. I had no choice. The greenhouse was abandoned, tucked behind the botany building where no one ever went. Broken glass littered the floor. The air smelled like dirt and decay. Sebastian was waiting for me in the center, arms crossed, green eyes glittering with malice. You came, he said. You left me no choice. Sebastian smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Poor little Omega. Thinks he's special because a rich alpha picked him up off the street. I'm not here to fight with you. Then why are you here? He stepped closer. To beg? To plead? To ask me nicely to leave you alone? I'm here because you threatened me. Sebastian laughed. Threatened? I don't make threats, Julian. I make promises. He pulled out his phone. One text. That's all it takes. One text to the scholarship committee, and your dirty little secret is everywhere. My heart pounded. Why are you doing this? Because Damon is mine. His voice cracked just slightly. He was supposed to be mine. I've waited years for him to notice me. And then you show up with your cheap clothes and your sad story, and he looks at you like you're the sun. I never asked for his attention. You didn't have to. That's what makes it worse. Sebastian's hand trembled. You didn't even try. And he chose you anyway. I saw it then. Beneath the cruelty and the jealousy, Sebastian was just as broken as I was. Just as desperate to be loved. Just as terrified of being alone. But that didn't excuse what he had done. Sebastian, I said quietly, this isn't going to end the way you want. You don't know what I want. I know you're about to make a mistake. He raised his phone. Goodbye, Julian. Put the phone down. The voice came from behind me. Cold. Familiar. Damon stepped out of the shadows, his silver eyes fixed on Sebastian like a predator who had finally found his prey. Sebastian's face went white. Damon. I can explain. You threatened him. Damon walked forward slowly. You added false fees to his account. You spread rumors across campus. And now you're blackmailing him with his own trauma. His voice was ice. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? Sebastian stumbled backward. I didn't. I recorded everything. Damon held up his own phone. Every word you just said. Sebastian's face crumpled. Damon, please. I love you. I've always loved you. I just wanted you to see me. Just once. Damon stopped in front of him. For a moment I thought I saw pity in his eyes. Love doesn't destroy, Damon said quietly. Love protects. Love sacrifices. You don't love me, Sebastian. You just want to own me. He turned to me. Let's go. I looked at Sebastian one last time. He was crying now, tears cutting tracks through his perfect makeup. He looked small. Lost. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. The next day, Sebastian Vance was suspended from the university. The administration cited harassment, fraud, and threatening behavior. His parents tried to fight it, but Damon's recording was undeniable. Sebastian would be gone for the rest of the semester. Maybe longer. The rumors about me stopped overnight. And for the first time in months I walked across campus with my head held high. Not because I was strong, but because someone had finally chosen to stand beside me. The week after Sebastian's suspension felt like emerging from a long, dark tunnel. I walked across campus without whispers following me. I sat in lectures without feeling eyes on the back of my neck. I studied in the library without finding cruel notes tucked between my pages. For the first time in months I could breathe. But the biggest change wasn't on campus. It was at home. Or rather, what used to be home. My father was still in jail, awaiting trial. The house was empty now. I had gone back once just to pack my things. The walls felt smaller than I remembered. The stains on the carpet looked darker in the daylight. I stood in the doorway of my old bedroom, the room with no bed, just a blanket on the floor, and I felt nothing. No sadness. No anger. Just relief. I wasn't coming back. Damon had offered to let me stay at his penthouse indefinitely. I had refused. Not because I didn't want to. Because I needed to prove to myself that I could stand on my own. That I wasn't trading one dependency for another. So I found a small studio apartment near campus. It was tiny. The paint was peeling. The radiator made a sound like a dying animal. But it was mine. I paid for it with money from a new work-study job at the campus library. Damon hated it. You have a hole in your ceiling, he said the first time he visited, staring up at the water stain like it had personally offended him. It's character. It's a health hazard. You're dramatic. He turned to look at me, standing in the middle of my cramped kitchen with his expensive shoes and his tailored coat. He looked like a prince who had wandered into a cave. Why won't you let me help you? He asked quietly. You are helping me. By letting you live here? He gestured at the peeling walls. This isn't help, Julian. This is survival. I walked over to him and took his hands. Damon. For the first time in my life I have something that's mine. No father. No charity. No one holding anything over my head. I squeezed his fingers. I need this. I need to know I can do it on my own. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he sighed. You're impossible. You like that about me. He pulled me into his arms. Unfortunately. But living on my own wasn't the only thing I had to figure out. My scholarship was under review. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, slipped under my apartment door like a bomb waiting to explode. I opened it with shaking hands. Dear Mr. Ashford, due to recent developments regarding your family circumstances, the scholarship committee has placed your funding under temporary review. Please report to the administrative office on Friday for a formal hearing. You may bring a representative if you wish. Sincerely, Dr. Helena Marsh, Chair, Scholarship Committee. Recent developments. That meant my father's arrest. Someone had found out. Someone had told them. I sat on my floor for an hour, the letter crumpled in my fist, trying not to panic. If I lost the scholarship, I lost everything. The apartment. The work-study. My entire future. I called Damon. He was at my door in 15 minutes. I'm coming with you to the hearing, he said. We were sitting on my second-hand couch, a piece of furniture so old it had probably witnessed the invention of electricity. Damon had his arm around my shoulders, holding me close. You don't have to, I said. I know. They're going to ask questions about my father. About the abuse. About why I didn't report it sooner. Damon turned to face me. Then we tell them the truth. The truth could get my scholarship revoked. The truth could also set you free. I looked at him. His gray eyes were steady, certain in a way I couldn't be. How do you do that? I asked. Do what? Believe that everything is going to be okay. Damon smiled, soft and small. Because I have you. The hearing was held in a small conference room on the third floor of the administration building. Dr. Marsh sat at the head of a long table, flanked by 3 other committee members. They looked at me like I was a problem they needed to solve. Damon sat beside me. His hand found mine under the table. Mr. Ashford, Dr. Marsh began, we've received information about your father's recent arrest. As you know, our scholarship requires students to maintain good standing both academically and personally. I understand, I said. Can you explain why we weren't informed about your home situation sooner? I took a breath. And then I told them everything. Not the polished version. Not the version where I pretended to be strong. The real version. The one where I was a scared Omega child who learned to hide bruises before he learned to tie his shoes. The one where I slept on floors and went to school hungry and flinched whenever someone raised their voice. The one where I survived. By the time I finished, the room was silent. Dr. Marsh's expression had changed. The cold professionalism had melted into something softer. Something almost like guilt. Mr. Ashford, she said quietly, I want you to know that none of us were aware of the extent of your situation. And I am deeply sorry that you had to endure it alone for so long. I blinked. Does that mean? Your scholarship is not in jeopardy. She smiled just slightly. In fact, we would like to offer you additional support. Counseling services. Housing assistance. Whatever you need to succeed. My throat tightened. I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep making us proud. I nodded, unable to speak. Damon squeezed my hand under the table. And for the first time in my life, I felt like the future was something I could actually reach. After the hearing, we stood outside the administration building. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Damon turned to me. See, he said. The truth set you free. I laughed. You're insufferable. And yet you're still here. I looked at him, this beautiful, impossible alpha who had refused to give up on me. Who had seen me at my worst and decided I was worth staying for. Yeah, I said softly. I'm still here. Damon smiled. Then he leaned down and kissed me right there in front of the administration building, in front of everyone. And I didn't pull away. Because I was done hiding. The weeks that followed were the strangest of my life. For the first time in 19 years, I didn't have to be afraid. I woke up in my tiny apartment without the sound of breaking bottles. I walked to campus without checking over my shoulder. I came home to silence, not the heavy, threatening silence of my father's house, but the peaceful kind. The kind that meant I was safe. Damon visited every day. Sometimes he brought groceries. Sometimes he brought takeout from restaurants I couldn't pronounce. Sometimes he just showed up with a book and sat on my couch, reading quietly while I studied at my tiny kitchen table. He never pushed for more than I was ready to give, and slowly, piece by piece, I started to trust again. One night, we were lying on my second-hand couch, tangled together in a way that shouldn't have been comfortable but was. The TV was playing some movie neither of us was watching. My head rested on Damon's chest, rising and falling with each breath. "Julian," he said quietly. What are we?" I lifted my head to look at him. His gray eyes were serious, searching my face for something I wasn't sure I knew how to give. "What do you want us to be?" I asked. Damon reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers lingered on my cheek. "I want to be yours," he said. "If you'll have me." My heart stuttered. "Damon, I know you're scared. I know you've been hurt by people who were supposed to love you." His thumb traced my jawline. "I know trust doesn't come easy for you. But I'm not going anywhere, Julian. I'm not your father. I'm not Sebastian. I'm just me." I stared at him. This boy who had everything. Money, power, status, a future so bright it could blind you. And he was lying on my broken couch, in my crumbling apartment, asking me if he could be mine. "You're crazy," I whispered. "Probably. This doesn't make any sense." "It doesn't have to." I kissed him. Not the tentative kiss from the bathroom floor. Not the shy kiss from the administration building. Something deeper. Something that said everything I didn't have words for. When we finally pulled apart, both of us breathless, Damon rested his forehead against mine. "I'll take that as a yes," he murmured. I laughed, the sound wet with tears I hadn't noticed were falling. "Yeah," I said. "It's a yes." But happiness, I was learning, didn't mean problems disappeared. My father's trial was scheduled for the following month. The prosecutor had asked me to testify. The thought of standing in a courtroom, facing the man who had raised his fists against me for as long as I could remember, made me want to disappear. Damon noticed I was pulling away. "You're doing it again?" he said one afternoon. We were sitting on a bench near the science building, the same bench where everything had started. "Doing what?" "Shutting down. Building walls." He turned to face me. "Talk to me." I looked at my hands. "The trial is in 2 weeks." "I know. I have to testify." "I know. What if I can't do it?" Damon was quiet for a moment. Then he took my hand. "Do you remember what you told me? About surviving?" I nodded. "You've survived worse than a courtroom, Julian. You've survived years of someone trying to break you. And you're still here. You're still standing." He lifted my hand to his lips and kissed my knuckles. "Testifying isn't about being strong. It's about telling the truth. And you've already done that. With the scholarship committee. With me. With yourself." I swallowed hard. What if he tries to talk to me? What if he looks at me? Then you look back. Damon's voice was steady. "And you remember that he doesn't own you anymore. You never did." I leaned into him, letting his warmth soak into my bones. "Stay with me tonight?" I asked quietly. "Always." The night before the trial, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my narrow bed, staring at the ceiling, running through every possible scenario in my head. What if the jury didn't believe me? What if my father got out? What if he came after me again? Beside me, Damon stirred. "You're thinking too loud," he mumbled. "Sorry." He turned over and pulled me into his arms. His chest was warm against my back. His breath was soft against my neck. "He can't hurt you anymore," Damon whispered. "You don't know that." "I do." His arms tightened around me. "Because I won't let him. Your father is never going to touch you again, Julian. I'll make sure of it." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that someone else could carry some of the weight. So I closed my eyes and let myself pretend. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wooden benches. A high ceiling. The judge in her black robe, looking down at everyone like they were pieces on a chessboard. I sat in the witness box, my hands folded in my lap, trying not to shake. My father sat at the defense table, dressed in a suit I had never seen before. His hair was combed. His face was clean-shaven. He looked like a different person. Then he looked at me. And I saw it. The same coldness. The same contempt. The same belief that I was nothing but a disobedient omega who needed to be put in his place. I looked away first. No, I thought. Not anymore. The prosecutor approached me. "Mr. Ashford, can you describe your relationship with your father?" I took a breath. And I told the truth. All of it. The bottles. The fist. The floor I slept on while my father took my bed. The bruises I hid. The meals I skipped. The years I spent believing I deserved everything that happened to me. By the time I finished, the jury was pale. The judge's expression was grim. And my father's lawyer had stopped objecting. My father himself sat motionless, staring at the table in front of him. He didn't look at me again. The verdict came 3 hours later. Guilty. On all counts. I watched as they led my father out of the courtroom in handcuffs. He didn't fight. He didn't speak. He just walked, head down, like a man who had finally run out of road. Damon was waiting for me in the hallway. He didn't say anything. He just opened his arms. And I walked into them. "It's over," I whispered against his chest. "It's over," he agreed. I cried. Not from sadness. From relief. From the knowledge that I never had to go back. That I was finally, truly free. Damon held me the whole time. And when I finally pulled back, wiping my eyes with the back of my hand, he smiled. "What now?" he asked. I looked at him. This boy who had seen me at my worst and stayed. Who had fought for me when I couldn't fight for myself. Who had given me a reason to believe that the future could be something other than pain. "Now," I said, "we live." 3 months later. I stood in front of the mirror in my tiny apartment, adjusting the collar of my shirt. It wasn't secondhand. Neither were the pants, or the shoes, or the tie that I couldn't quite figure out how to fasten. Damon had taken me shopping last month. I had protested. He had ignored me. And for the first time in my life, I owned clothes that fit properly. Clothes that didn't have holes. Clothes that made me feel like I belonged somewhere. Tonight, I needed them more than ever. The Whitmore Foundation Gala. The biggest event of the year. Every powerful family in the city would be there. Every influential alpha, every ambitious omega, every person who mattered in the world Damon came from. And I was going as his date. My hands were shaking. A knock on my door made me jump. I opened it to find Damon standing in the hallway, dressed in a black tuxedo that made him look like he had stepped out of a magazine. His gray eyes swept over me, and his lips curved into a smile. "You look nervous," he said. "I'm not nervous." "You're lying." "Okay, I'm a little nervous." He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. Then he took my hands and looked at me, really looked at me like I was something precious. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "If you're not ready, we can stay here. Order pizza. Watch bad movies. Whatever you want." I shook my head. "No. I want to go." "Why?" I looked down at our joined hands. His fingers were warm around mine. "Steady." "Because," I said, "I spent my whole life hiding. Hiding from my father. Hiding from my past. Hiding from anyone who might get close enough to see the real me." I looked up. "I don't want to hide anymore." Damon's smile widened. "That's my omega." He kissed my forehead, gentle and sweet. Then he took my hand and we walked out the door together. The gala was held at the Grand Imperial Hotel, a building so fancy that my entire apartment could probably fit inside the lobby. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling. Gold trim lined the walls. Everywhere I looked, people in expensive gowns and tailored suits laughed and drank and pretended to care about charity. When we walked in, the room went quiet. I felt every eye turn toward us. Felt the whispers start. Felt the weight of 100 judgments landing on my shoulders. The scholarship boy. The omega from the wrong side of town. The one who stole Damon Whitmore. I held my head high. Damon's hand never left mine. We made our way through the crowd, accepting champagne flutes we didn't drink and making small talk with people whose names I immediately forgot. Everyone was polite. Everyone was curious. Everyone wanted to know who I was and where I came from and how I had managed to catch the most eligible alpha in the city. I didn't give them the satisfaction of an answer. Let them wonder. Let them whisper. I was done explaining myself. Halfway through the evening, Damon pulled me onto the balcony. The city sprawled beneath us, a sea of lights and movement and life. The night air was cool against my skin. For a moment we just stood there, side by side, not speaking. "Are you okay?" Damon asked finally. I turned to look at him. The moonlight caught his face, softening the sharp edges of his jaw. He looked at me like I was the only person in the world. "Yeah," I said. "I'm okay." "Just okay?" I smiled. "I'm happy, Damon." "Is that what you wanted to hear?" He stepped closer, his hands finding my waist. "Maybe. You're impossible. You like that about me." I laughed. He was right. I did. The trial was over. My father was in prison. Sebastian was gone. My scholarship was secure. My grades were higher than ever. I had a job I didn't hate, an apartment that was mine, and an alpha who looked at me like I had hung the moon. 3 months ago, I was sleeping on a floor, hiding bruises, and believing I didn't deserve anything better. Now I was standing on a balcony at the most exclusive event in the city, wearing clothes that fit, with a future that stretched out before me like an open road. It wasn't a fairy tale. There would still be hard days. There would still be moments when the fear crept back in, when I flinched at loud noises or woke up in a cold sweat from dreams I couldn't escape. But I wasn't alone anymore. And that made all the difference. Damon pulled me closer, his forehead resting against mine. I love you, he said. The words hung in the air between us. 3 words I had never heard from anyone. 3 words I wasn't sure I deserved. But when I looked into his eyes, those gray eyes that had seen me at my worst and never looked away, I realized something. Love wasn't about deserving. It was about choosing. And Damon had chosen me. Every single day from the very beginning. I love you too, I whispered. His smile was like the sun coming out. He kissed me soft and slow, right there on the balcony with the city spread out beneath us and the stars watching from above. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was surviving. I felt like I was living. Later, when the gala was over and we were walking back to Damon's car, he stopped in the middle of the sidewalk. Julian. I turned. Yeah. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. My heart stopped. It's not what you think, he said quickly, seeing my expression. I mean, it could be. Someday. If you want. But not yet. Not until you're ready. He opened the box. Inside was a key. My penthouse, he explained. I know you have your apartment. I know you want to stand on your own. And I respect that. I do. He took my hand. But I also want you to know that you always have a place with me. Not because you need me. Because you want me. And because I want you. Every version of you. The strong one and the scared one and the one who still flinches when someone raises their voice. My eyes were burning. I'm not asking you to move in, he continued. I'm asking you to keep a key. Just in case. Just so you know. Just so I knew I had somewhere to go. Just so I knew I wasn't alone. I took the key. It was warm in my palm. Yeah, I said, my voice cracking. Okay. Damon pulled me into his arms. And standing there, on the quiet street, with the key to his world in my hand and his heart in my keeping, I finally understood what it meant to be free. Not free from pain. Not free from fear. But free to choose. Free to stay. Free to love. And for the first time in my life I chose to stay.